The world is not fair. And the sooner you accept that brutal truth, the sooner you can stop being its victim. Right now, while you're watching this, someone with half your talent is being promoted. Someone with less skill is commanding more respect. Someone who couldn't hold a candle to your abilities is already living the life you want simply because they understand the power games you've been trained to ignore. You've been conditioned since childhood to think playing fair is noble, that waiting your turn makes you worthy, that kindness alone is enough to earn you respect. In reality, those habits make you prey. The game you think you're playing doesn't exist. There's only the game of power, and the people who understand it rule the people who don't. Machiavelli decoded these rules 500 years ago. They're not theories. They're not relics of some brutal medieval past. They're the operating system of human nature itself. Today, you're going to see those rules stripped bare. Once you see them, you can't go back to who you were. For years, I was the one who thought merit mattered. I was polite, hardworking, even brilliant in my field, and invisible. I watched as confident manipulators rose above me. I saw people with no skill dominate rooms simply because they understood how to project strength. It wasn't until I woke up to these truths that everything shifted. This video is that moment for you. Before we dive in, you need to make one decision right now. This isn't passive information. This is a shift in identity. If you don't break the victim mindset, everything you're about to learn will bounce off you. Write this in the comments right now. I refuse to be a pawn in other people's power games. This is your first move. This is how you stop being manipulated and start becoming unmanipulable. Every principle I'm about to show you demands that shift. Because once you see how power actually works, you can never again hide behind the excuse of not knowing. You'll either keep playing fair and stay weak, or you'll learn to play to win. Principle 1. Power isn't given, it's taken. Waiting to be noticed is psychological suicide. Every time you expect others to hand you authority, they're consolidating theirs. Every time you hope someone will finally see your worth, they're exploiting your invisibility. Machiavelli warned us, people respect strength, not please. If you're sitting quietly waiting to be invited into power, you're already losing. Stop asking for permission. Start positioning yourself so people can't move forward without you. That's what power really looks like. It's not begging for a seat at the table. It's building the leverage that makes your absence cost them more than your presence. Think about your own life. How many times have you given your time, energy, or talent to someone who barely noticed? How many times have you expected your work to speak for itself, while someone else loudly took credit and advanced? That's not bad luck. That's your programming. You've been trained to believe that patience and humility will be rewarded. But patience without leverage is just self-erasure. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Men should either be treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries. For heavy ones, they cannot. In psychological terms, it's the same with power. If you're going to act, act decisively. If you're going to claim a position, don't ask for it. Take it so fully that no one dares challenge it. When you stop waiting for permission and start acting from leverage, people treat you differently. They don't see you as a volunteer hoping for validation. They see you as a force whose participation is essential. This is the first step in breaking the cycle of being overlooked. Power isn't given, it's taken. Principle 2. Strategic ruthlessness beats emotional niceness. Most people think ruthlessness means cruelty. They're wrong. Real ruthlessness is not about harming others. It's about cold emotional control. Naive people lash out when attacked or freeze under pressure. Strategists feel everything, but act only when it serves their interests. They master their composure. They know that one decisive act creates more power than 100 weak protests. This is why emotionally reactive people are easy to manipulate. Push their buttons and they explode. Trigger their guilt and they fold. They give away their power every time someone provokes them. The psychologically dominant person does something else entirely. They treat emotions as data, not commands. They feel the anger, frustration, or disappointment. And then they decide, what response advances my position? Machiavelli put it plainly. Injuries should be inflicted all at once so that their ill savor, being less lasting, may give less offense. In modern terms, this means when you must respond to an attack, don't drag it out. Don't bicker endlessly. Make one decisive move that ends the conflict on your terms. Then go silent and let your composure speak for itself. Imagine someone publicly tries to humiliate you. The reactive person argues back, explaining themselves, looking flustered, validating the attack. The strategically ruthless person either ignores it, making the attacker look petty, or responds with a calm, cutting remark that flips the social power instantly. They don't show anger. They show control. That control becomes respect. When others realize they can't manipulate your emotions, they start treating you with caution. Your calm becomes threatening. Your restraint becomes power. This is strategic ruthlessness. It's not about being heartless. It's about being untouchable. Principle 3. Appearances are weapons. People don't have time to know the real you. They judge what you project. That might feel unfair, but it's how the human brain works. It shortcuts. It categorizes. It decides in seconds whether you're a leader or a follower, a threat or a pushover, high value or disposable. You either manage that process or someone else manages it for you, and not in your favor. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you are. In other words, your appearance is your reality to most people. Your reputation precedes you. Your presence either elevates you or erases you. Stop believing your good intentions will shine through. They won't. Only your presentation will. Look at any environment where influence matters. Offices, politics, social media, dating. The person who manages their image dominates the person who doesn't, even if their substance is identical. Two people achieve the same result. One documents it strategically, framing themselves as competent and successful. The other assumes their work will speak for itself. Guess who gets invited, promoted, or followed? This isn't about being fake. It's about being deliberate. You highlight your strengths instead of hiding them. You dress for the level you're claiming, not the one you're given. You control your body language, shoulders back, chin up, slow measured movements. Because your physiology broadcasts your psychology. You cultivate mystery. You let people wonder about you instead of oversharing. You make your presence feel expensive and your respect hard to earn. When you do this consistently, people begin to fill in the blanks about you with positive assumptions. They project power onto you before you've even demonstrated it. They treat you as important because you've trained them to. Appearances aren't superficial. They're strategic weapons. Principle 4. Fear outweighs love and power games. If you must choose, be respected before you're liked. Likability without respect makes you safe to disrespect. Respect makes others calculate before crossing you. This doesn't mean you become a tyrant. It means you become someone with consequences. People should know that disappointing you costs something real. Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved if one has to lack one of the two." What he meant wasn't terror or cruelty. He meant predictable consequence. When others know your standards are non-negotiable and your boundaries are enforced, they begin to respect you even if they don't always like you. Think about the people in your life who command the most respect. They're probably not the friendliest. They're probably not the most agreeable. They're the ones whose approval matters, because they don't give it cheaply. They're the ones who, when they say no, it actually sticks. They're formidable, but fair. And because they're fair, their formidability feels justified. Most people reverse this. They strive to be liked. They say yes to things they hate. They tolerate disrespect, hoping it will stop. They make their approval cheap and then wonder why no one values it. Likability without consequence is weakness. Respect without likability is still power. Ideally, you blend the two. Warmth with backbone, fairness with firmness. But if you have to pick, always pick respect first. This shift is psychological. You stop asking, will they like me if I do this? And start asking, will this action increase or decrease my social power? You become comfortable with others' discomfort when it serves your long-term position. You stop competing for approval and start being the person whose approval others compete for. Principle 5. Control the narrative or lose the war. Actions don't speak for themselves. Stories do. Whoever frames the story controls the meaning. The same decision can be interpreted as principled or selfish, bold or reckless, visionary or arrogant. The person who controls the narrative decides which version spreads. Most people ignore this. They focus only on their actions and assume others will interpret them charitably. That's a fatal mistake. In human psychology, the story matters more than the facts. Think of any scandal, any public conflict. The side that tells its version first and most persuasively usually wins the court of public opinion, regardless of who's right. Machiavelli saw it in politics, but it applies to your daily life. People don't have time to investigate every situation. They rely on simplified stories from trusted sources. If you don't tell your story, someone else will, and they won't tell it in your favor. So you must anticipate attacks and frame your moves proactively. When you succeed, you tell the story of how you succeeded. When you fail, you frame it as a lesson in resilience. When others criticize you, you reframe it as evidence you're doing something bold enough to threaten the status quo. Example: you end a toxic friendship. If you stay silent, they may paint you as selfish. If you frame it as, I set boundaries with someone who is draining my energy and disrespecting my time, people see self-respect instead of heartlessness. Same action, completely different perception. This is psychological warfare at its most subtle. Always ask, what story will this action tell about me? How can I shape that story before anyone else does? Control the narrative, and you control how your world reacts to you. Principle 6. Systems beat outbursts. The most powerful people don't shout, threaten, or guilt trip. They don't rely on emotional outbursts to maintain control. They build systems, automatic, predictable consequences, that teach people how to treat them without a single lecture. When you build systems, you take your personality out of the equation. You stop being the bad guy enforcing rules, and the rules begin to enforce themselves. When you rely on anger, people learn to manage you. They wait for you to calm down. They negotiate. They provoke you when they want to throw you off. When you rely on systems, there's nothing to negotiate. Respect leads to access. Disrespect leads to exclusion. The consequences are as consistent as gravity. Machiavelli wrote that a wise ruler should rely on what is in his own control, not on what is in the control of others. Systems are your control. Instead of hoping people will value your time, you create an environment where only those who show respect get access to it. Instead of begging for appreciation, you automatically direct your energy to those who appreciate it. Instead of constantly reinforcing your boundaries, you make your boundaries self-enforcing. Here's what it looks like in practice. Imagine you're always the one planning social events. Certain friends cancel last minute or show up late. The reactive approach is to complain, shame, or give guilt trips. The systematic approach is simple. You plan activities only for people who confirm attendance and show up on time. Chronic offenders just stop being included. You don't announce it. You don't argue. You don't make a scene. You just implement it. Very quickly, people adjust because they want access. They can't argue with a system the way they can argue with a personal decision. They can't manipulate automatic consequences the way they can manipulate emotions. This is what psychological authority feels like. It's calm, it's consistent, and it's non-negotiable. When you stop reacting and start systemizing, you move from being a personality to being an environment. People adapt to environments. They rarely adapt to words. Build systems that make your standards inevitable instead of negotiable. Principle 7, the fox and the lion. Machiavelli's classic metaphor still cuts to the core of power. A fox to recognize traps, a lion to frighten wolves. You must be both. The fox sees the hidden dangers. The lion projects force so others don't even attempt to strike. But the genius lies in knowing when to be which. Most people lean entirely one way. Some are all fox, cunning but timid, always scheming but never confronting. They get stuck in analysis, manipulation, and secrecy, but never command respect. Others are all lion, loud, forceful, charging into traps because they don't see them. They intimidate, but eventually self-destruct. The psychologically sophisticated person blends both. They're invisible when they need to be, gathering information, building alliances, recognizing traps. They're undeniable when they need to be, moving with speed and force to establish dominance. They switch seamlessly, so opponents never know what's coming. Think of it like this. You don't roar every time you walk into a room. You observe. You listen. You gather leverage quietly. But when it's time to act, you act in a way that leaves no doubt. Your intelligence becomes invisible until your strength makes it irreversible. In practical terms, this might mean you don't reveal your plans until they're too far along to be sabotaged. It might mean you watch for the subtle cues of manipulation and sidestep them before they tighten. It might mean you don't respond to every slight. But when you do respond, it's with force that resets the entire dynamic. Being a fox keeps you safe from traps. Being a lion keeps you safe from wolves. Being both makes you untouchable. Principle 8. Silent power is the final stage. The final stage of power is silence. Real influence whispers. The most dangerous people don't advertise their moves. They don't broadcast their ambitions. They don't explain their strategies. They simply build leverage quietly and strike only when the outcome is already decided. People who brag about their toughness, their intelligence, or their ruthlessness usually aren't. They're advertising what they wish they had, not what they actually control. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. It's felt. It's assumed. It's demonstrated through results, not words. Think of the most formidable person you know. Do they constantly tell you how smart they are? Do they threaten everyone who crosses them? Or do they sit back, watch, and when they finally move, everything changes? That's silent power. Silent power means you stop broadcasting your intentions. You don't show your hand until it's too late for anyone to stop you. You don't need to argue. You don't need to warn. You don't need to posture. You let people experience your influence without ever seeing how you built it. This isn't about being sneaky. It's about understanding that strategic discretion is more powerful than tactical transparency. When your moves are invisible, your opponents can't prepare. When your alliances are quiet, your enemies can't counter them. When your power is felt but not seen, it becomes inevitable rather than aggressive. Build your psychological empire quietly. Let others make noise while you make strategic moves. Demonstrate power through results, not through announcements. Let your influence whisper. These tactics aren't about cruelty. They're about sophistication. They're about refusing to be naive. Right now, someone less capable than you is already using them on you. Every day you hesitate, someone more ruthless is building the influence and respect you want. Every day you choose to be nice instead of strategic, you're handing power to someone who sees kindness as weakness. The game will not stop. The question is whether you'll keep playing fair or start playing to win. Niceness without strategy is weakness. Strategic understanding is how you stop being prey. If you're ready to stop being dominated, prove it. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs the wake-up call. Subscribe because this is only the beginning of your transformation, from overlooked to untouchable. Remember what you declared in the comments. I refuse to be a pawn in other people's power games. Now stop refusing and start dominating. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. Because while you're deciding whether to become psychologically dangerous, dangerous people are already deciding what to do with you.